I have, feel free to ask any questions. I don't know if we'll take questions at the end or,
we'll
go here now.
We'll probably sit on the questions just for now, and we'll probably have Joe just maybe kind of speak on Lowrance's and Hummingbird, how they have similar technology, and maybe he can even touch on down and side imaging too, and just how they
putting
work.
it on your boat now. Yeah, it's so my name's Joe Rodrigues. Obviously, introduced me. I was a long-time tournament fisherman here in Ontario and had a very brief period where I was trying to fish professionally in the States on the bass side, and unfortunately I wasn't as successful as Chris and Corey and Gussie and Coop and now Danny, hopefully this year too. But so I kind of was keeping up with the technology and stuff too, and then started rigging my own boats, and then a couple of buddies' boats, and then next thing you know, a little business started on the side kind of, and I own and operate Pure Power Marine. I work a lot with Martin. When I get, a lot of my customers are not trolling guys, but they're fishing, bass fishing, or walleye fishing guys, or just fishing guys in general. And I range from basically basic installs to complete systems on boats where guys are running 2 forward-facing sonar transducers on their trolling motors and Mega Live target lock 360. They got 5 12-inch graphs on their boats, and so I get the range from 1 graph fishing to I guess some of the boats that I'm seeing now this year on the Elite Series, it looks like guys are running 6 graphs on their boats now, 3 on their console and 3 on their bow, which is going to be interesting to see this year. So that's kind of how I started doing it, and then worked with Lowrance Canada a lot on kind of developing a system, because all this technology that we're talking about tonight, I think my big thing for me is making sure that it's set up right. And I know Martin can attest to it too, how many boats he sees not installed right, and everybody says, you can have the greatest technology on your boat, but if it's not put on the boat properly, it's a waste of time and money. And that's the one thing I think is the biggest takeaway for me, is this stuff is user-friendly, and for, a guy that's pretty well mechanically inclined can probably install it himself, but I think Martin would agree that there's a lot of stuff there that gets overlooked when you start installing, 3, 4, 5 graphs, multiple transducers, GPS pucks, trolling motor GPS pucks. There's a lot going on a boat. And I think for me, the biggest thing to take away from this is when I tell guys as they want to get into forward-facing sonar, side imaging, fancy units, is they got to start with the proper powerhouse. Like that power in your boat has to be proper battery size, and then from there, proper charging system so that you can charge all this stuff, because these things are running processors. They're basically computers. They're flat screen TVs with computers in them. And they're drawing anywhere from 1.8 amps to almost 3 amps an hour for them to run, just because of the clarity. When he says he can see his line, the screen that he's looking at, the clarity on that screen is like your flat screen at home. And he's not kidding. I can drop 6-pound test line down with a little tiny 2-inch drop shot, and I can watch my weight go down to the bottom, and I can watch fish go down and get it. So that's the function of these units, and that's how precise and how intricate they get. They're literally iPads on your boat. So you guys don't get discouraged by it all, and it seems like it's a lot, but I know I have a couple guys in the room I've done work for and installed. I see Kelly, Mr. Marr over there. He's embraced the technology. But yeah, you really got to start with the proper power system. Look at how much you're going to draw, how much you're going to run on your boat, and where you want to go with it. All these companies are great. Garmin, Lowrance, Hummingbird, Ray Marine. Ray Marine hasn't really jumped into that realm yet that everybody's doing with, forward-facing sonar and stuff, and the network integration. But the 3 manufacturers, I get this question a lot. Well, who's better? I don't know. It's literally splitting hairs. It's like to ask, like, Mark made a good point. Like, is Android or iPhone better? Well, it's user. Like, what are you used to? Like, what are you used to seeing? What do you like, right? Like, I know guys say they like Lowrance because it's a little bit, the touch screen and there's not as many menus and it has a little bit more auto processing. But then I looked at Garmin this year at the Garmin booth, and they've changed their operating system, and it's starting to do a lot more auto selections for people and giving them more palettes that are already pre-selected. So it's taking a lot of the guesswork out, right? And then Humminbird for a while was kind of behind on their side imaging, down imaging technology. Then they brought out Mega DI, but then their processors, like their units themselves, weren't quite there with color palettes and stuff, right? So everybody's trying to beat everybody, but in the end, the idea is that I really feel that if guys are going to stick with brands, to just kind of look at your boat as a network, right? And you can have different units and stuff on there, and I see guys run Lowrance mapping, but they want Humminbird 360, and they like Garmin LiveScope. Like, I've put that on a boat, but the idea is they're sharing waypoints through their Lowrance unit. And it works, but I really like when I see like Humminbird and Lowrance and Garmin when it's just a one boat network, because they all work well together, right? They all have their own trolling motors now. I know Garmin's got a Force, and then they got another one coming out that's auto stow and deploy.
Yes.
Right? I forget the name of it. Kraken. The Kraken.
The Kraken just came
right?
out, yeah,
So like
2024.
Yeah, the Kraken now, and then the Kraken now, because the big thing with all you guys that have, how many of you guys have those Alteras or Tarovas, right? The auto stow and deploy. So the one caveat to the forward-facing sonar was those transducers couldn't mount on those trolling motors because the shaft slides up and down, right? Garmin went out and one-upped everybody by making a bigger, fatter shaft, and now that transducer cable can actually go in the shaft and up. So now you have an auto stow and deploy trolling motor that can have forward-facing sonar technology on it. It's insane, right? So you guys that put your trolling, how many of you guys put your trolling motors down out front to steer your boat or control your boat in a troll, right? Everybody, right? So now that transducer is on the front of your boat, on your shaft, and you can control, just like the guys that fish from the front of their boat, like bass guys or walleye jigging guys. You can control now what you're seeing. And I mentioned to Garmin when I was looking at this, I was like, what would be really cool if that mount on the bottom of that trolling motor was motorized and it could move, because you're
Counterbalance,
you're countering the
was
trolling
always-
motor. And the guy looked at me, he just laughed. He goes, "You don't think we've already thought of that?" And I was like, "Holy cow! Like, where is this going?" Right? Like, the software, the technology, right? It's insane. And it's just they keep one-upping each other. So like, if you're gonna jump into it, I say like the biggest thing is to make sure you guys are spending the money on powering your boat properly, charging your boat properly, and then wiring your boat properly. And I know Martin's a big proponent of that. Him and I talk a lot about that. And from an installer perspective, there's a lot of rules. Technically, it's like when you wire a boat, you're a marine electrician, and just like any electrician at your house has rules and licenses and stuff like that they have to follow, it's the same thing. And I know Martin and I take that pretty seriously, and I think that's the big caveat to where guys say, "Oh no, Garmin's better," or "Oh no, Hummingbird's better," or "No, Lowrance is better." I just think somebody's installed it better on your boat, or you installed it better than your buddy. Because I've gotten guys' boats, and a lot of the times I do is my customers are new to the software and to the systems and stuff, so we'll put it on their boat, and then we'll go out when they come to pick up their boat. We'll go for a day out on the water, and I'll give them like a sonar lesson, right? And the first thing they're like, "I've never seen my units, they're so clear, look at how bright it is, what did you do to my boat?" I'm like, "Nothing, I just put proper wiring in it." Like, it's not rocket science, right? So I really think that that's a huge part of all of this, and it's an investment, because I can't tell you, like, I get customers that they're like, "Yeah, I just bought Garmin LiveScope, LVS 34, or Active Target, or Mega Live," and I got 3 12-inch graphs, and can you install them on my boat? Yep, no problem. I can do that. We can get this going. What do you got for a battery? I'm going to run it off my Group 24, 60 amp hour battery. Buddy, that's not going to work. Like, you don't have enough power. And you start explaining things to them, and they're like, yeah, well, I don't have any more money. I'm not spending more money, so you just got to put it on my boat. Well, but it's not going to work. Like, you don't have enough power to power all this. Like, you're going to be running out of power. You're going to be dead in the water. And or I say, yep, we got to get you a battery. Okay, what kind of battery do I need? Well, you got 2 choices. You got AGMs, or you can go lithium. Well, how much is a lithium battery? And you tell them how much a lithium battery is, and they're like, oh, I'm not spending that much money. Just leave the battery, and I just want to fix it. Or, you start explaining to them the wiring, and I don't know. Martin talks about it too. Like, wiring's not cheap. So you tell them the cost of wiring their boat, and you say, I'll give basic harness install on my boat. They're $575 for a harness, and it powers, six units on your boat, or 6 boxes and units, whatever. And they're like, I'm not spending $575 to install this on my boat. Well, I guess we're not installing on your boat, because this is what you need. You need a good base foundation in order for all of this great technology to work, right? And to kind of transition into sonars and technology, the integration in units to having the systems all working together is insane. Even from a trolling perspective, like he was talking about live technology, forward-facing sonar technology. You add side imaging transducers now, and I know Garmin's got it, and I know Lowrance. I'll speak on Lowrance now. Lowrance has got a new side imaging transducer with their Pro that has what's called fish reveal. So what they do is they take their down imaging sonar that literally has the traditional, the traditional sonar colors for your fish. When you see one in a 2D sonar, and it's got depends on your palette, but like a yellow, orange, red, whatever. They'll take that color, that sonar image, and then put it on side imaging. So do you guys know what side imaging is? So you're looking down at the floor of the lake off to the sides. They'll take that, so now you can identify fish in color on your side imaging. So that was the biggest thing, was guys had to use side imaging. It was great when it came out, and I remember a couple of us up here were putting those transducers on the bottom of our trolling motors, because when we were fishing up front, we can see left and right of us and down, so now we can kind of scan. But the hardest thing is guys couldn't tell a fish from a rock, or a fish from a stick. And they were always like, I don't know, is that fish?
And you
is
see
that
it from a perspective mode, right?
so you're looking down, right?
Bird's eye view.
It's a bird's eye view, so they couldn't tell. And everything looks what it is. Like when I do lessons, guys are like, well, what does a rock look like? Well, a rock looks like a rock. It's the shape of a rock. But a fish on the traditional side imaging will have like a white, like a grain of rice, right? So it'll look white because of the return, and it's a grain of rice. Or sometimes if you're lucky, if the fish is high enough off bottom, you can see a little bit of a shadow underneath it, right? But now the new transducers will overlay your traditional colored sonar, so there's no question whether that's a fish or not, because if it comes back with the sonar return, that's a fish, right? So that's a big change to side imaging technology that Lowrance is throwing out there this year that I think is absolutely insane. Hummingbird's technology right now is just as good, but I think what they're trying to do right now is really work on this target lock thing, because one of the issues with guys that fish not trolling but on their trolling motors, and they're just fishing off the front of the boat, we'll say, is you're limited to controlling your trolling motor and where your forward-facing sonar is pointing. So every time you try to adjust your boat to move your boat, your trolling motor moves the sonar off. So Humminbird has what's called Mega Live Target Lock. So it's basically on the trolling motor, it's a separate turret that's controlled that it will, if you pull up and you lock on a rock that has fish on it, no matter what happens to my trolling motor, that transducer stays pointed at that rock. So those fish never come in and out of your screen anymore, right? So that's a kind of cool technology that Humminbird really worked on. So everybody has their pros and cons, right? Humminbird had 360 for a while. Nobody else had 360 imaging. They were like, everybody, this is crazy. I can see 360 degrees now from a down imaging perspective or side imaging perspective all around my boat. And now we've gotten to forward facing sonar. So like literally when guys come to me, I've rigged, the last one I was saying, a customer bought a brand new Skeeter bass boat. It was $135,000. I did the install for the dealership. He put 4 Humminbird Helix 12s on it, Mega Live target lock, Humminbird 360, 4 lithium batteries on this boat, and he literally walked out the door at like 75 grand. Like, it was insane. He cheaped out. Yeah, he totally cheaped out. And it was quite the setup to try to rig on a boat, right? Because there's networking cables between all those. So like everything's talking to each other, right? And everything's all working together, because if you hit spot lock on the Ultrex, well, the Ultrex has got to work with the target lock. So the target lock needs to stay locked. So its GPS, it has a separate GPS from the Ultrex GPS, which is separate from the Humminbird GPS. So you got 3 GPS pucks now on a boat. So this gives you an idea of like how much laying out and stuff that has to go on. And with that now, the next step that we're starting to see is the other thing that Lawrence kind of noticed was, this is great. I have forward-facing sonar, I have 2D sonar, and I have side imaging sonar running, but I'm seeing interference now because the range, like you guys understand like how they operate, the kilohertz ranges are all different, or sometimes they get similar. So sometimes on forward-facing sonar, I was starting to see, as they amped up the clarity on side imaging or forward-facing sonar, I started to see interference now, where I could see like pulses on my forward sonar, almost like an ultrasound. And what it was the transducer below it shooting its pulse to work. So Lawrence has now added in their new units a separate wire that eliminates interference now. So instead of having to change frequencies to get them away from each other, you just wire in the wire correctly and it'll eliminate interference now. It's insane. I'm telling you guys, the technology is massive. So like for trolling guys now, because you're gonna have, you have your, what do you have? You have your regular sonar, you can have a side imaging sonar, right? So some companies have it together, some guys do it separately, but Lawrence has a 3-in-1, so we'll use Lawrence. So all 3, side imaging, down imaging, and traditional are in one. But then you have your fish hawk, right? And then you'll have your transducers for your, if you have like an Airmar or whatever, if you want to, whatever, right? Through a hull, a deep through hull. And then you have your sonar if you're running forward-facing sonar. So we have like five different frequencies operating on this boat at one time, right? So again, Lawrence was like, we're going to try to tune this out, because in the past what I had to do was I'd dial it all in, and then I would like change the gain on one or change the frequency on this one and kind of pull one from back and forth. So there is a little bit of tuning that has to come into this, and it is like a time on the water. But I will say that it is a very, very handy technology to have. And I know it's crazy in terms of, you know, guys that just want to fun fish and troll or whatever, and it's not something that like everybody just jumps into and spends, you know, $35,000 in electronics and stuff on their boats. But it is, I do say that if you are going to start getting into it, start with the right battery, start with the right wiring, start with the right charging system, because it's just going to cause you trouble down the road and more money down the road that you need to spend. A lot of good stuff will start from that proper install and the proper batteries, and then you guys can build. Like this stuff, as you guys know, it's changing like almost yearly, right? So yeah, LVS 34 or like Lawrence HDS Lives for 3 years were a hot commodity. Guys were paying top dollar for them because they were so good. I gotta have them. Well, last summer, Lawrence throws out HDS Pro, and the Lives instantly go on half price. right? So now, if you set your boat up properly, you can just grab one at half price. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't have HDS Pros on my boat, and I don't plan on putting HDS Pros on my boat. There's a lot of cool technology in there, but my lives work perfectly fine. I have Active Target 1. I don't even have the second gen of Active Target. And is it better? Is it clearer? Maybe, kind of. There's some progressions and, you know, software changes that they've made it better. But Active Target 1 and Lives, when they're installed properly, work just as good. And they operate just as clearly. Right? Same with Garmin too, right? Garmin's big thing from 32 to 34 was that depth, right? They needed to catch up with Lowrance's depth because Lowrance had a pretty good depth in that shallow transducer. So their 34 gives Garmin guys that depth and then that clarity, right? So,
And then they dropped the hammer with the 62.
and then drop so this is what I'm saying. It's insane, right? So now 62. Like I watched a guy use a 62 last year in the Bass Elites on the St. Lawrence, Asian Japanese guy, and he's a Garmin Pro, and he also used the new Garmin graph.
So Garmin just released
16.
for 2024. No, they just released for 2024. This is crazy, guys. 4K technology.
Yeah,
It's a 9000 series. The largest screen they make is a 27-inch.
yeah, it's
It costs $34,000
so
for a single unit. That's no transducers.
So-
That's a single unit. Now,
this-
granted, that's not, you know, that's going up on the front of your Viking or your.
these are yachts now.
Yes,
But-
but that's where we're going with this stuff. It's
This is-
4K technology, $30,000+ for a single unit.
right, and now you can buy a SV106 for like
Exactly.
for next to nothing, and the
That will do the same thing.
and the 106 works just as good. Like for a casual fisherman, you guys aren't gonna like this isn't gonna make a difference, right? Like when I rig tournament guys' boats, yeah, like guys are like, okay, I want this, and I gotta have this, and I gotta because yeah, it will make a difference. Because the reality of the situation is, 4 years ago when I first put forward-facing sonar on my boat for the Canadian Tire Open, I went out there and I remember watching like 10 boats fishing shallow off of, you know, Waverly, and I was like, I just went in there, put my trolling motor down, and I never even made a cast. I was just moving around boats and watching guys casting. And I'm just looking. I'm like, oh, there's one, cast, caught it, kept looking, and I burned through a whole entire area that would have taken me 3 hours to fish. I fished it in 30 minutes because I never made a cast unless I saw a fish. And every time I made a cast, I watched the fish swim at the bait, eat it. Or they swam at the bait and then turned and swam away. And I was like, these ones aren't worth it, right? So there is advantages, like he's saying, to watching it, because a lot of times when I thought, I got to get these fish to bite, and then I just realized they're not going to bite because they're not reacting. Or a few times we've had it where we're fishing out deep, and you know how you throw a drop shot out there and your weight goes down, and all of a sudden you're like, thunk, and you feel a bite, and you set the hook and you don't get a fish. You're like, what the heck? And you throw it out there again, bait goes down, thunk, feel a bite, nothing, right? What I was watching on my forward-facing sonar, that fish was actually reacting because the water's so clear to the weight coming down. And it was eating the weight before it ate the bait, right? And it was eating your drop shot weight. So I was like, okay, wait a second. First thing I did, take my nice shiny tungsten jump shot weight, painted it black or I painted it green. Switched to a black one or a green one, went down. Yeah, most of the time they didn't bite it, but the odd time you would still, because it would clear, they would still eat the weight, right? So then you know, okay, drop shot's not gonna work because they're eating the weight. So you just go to a regular minnow, Ned rig or whatever, drop that down, boom, you catch the fish. So I wouldn't have been able to see that on 2D sonar because you're only gonna see the fish react and your bait go down, right? And it's gonna be lagged. Now, forward-facing sonar, I could literally watch what the fish was doing, and I was watching it eat my weight every single time. Right? So yeah, they're eating they're lead balls, they're tracking flashers. Like guys would say that with Alabama rigs for a lot of times. They would run one bait different than the rest of the A rig, and that's because sometimes the fish would come in and they would track and they would key on the one that was different to eat, right? And it would always be, you rig it bigger or smaller or different color or whatever. So all these stuff makes sense, and they're different species. We were talking bass here, but now like salmon are obviously doing the same thing, right? Or, we're watching fish come in on a jerkbait and just one fish is tracking it and it's not eating it, and then all of a sudden a second fish will come out of nowhere and it'll get more aggressive because they start competing now, right? So that gives you an idea of what fish are doing. The real live data is unbelievable. But I say, for me, fishing still, as great as the forward-facing sonar is, I still use my side imaging and my traditional down imaging a lot. I have my Ghost trolling motor has the 3-in-1 transducer, so I have side, down, and 2D all on that transducer, and I use that a lot. I have all three operating at the same time. So I run side imaging, traditional sonar, down imaging. So I'm watching what's going on, and sometimes I'll split and I'll run the transducer off the front and the transducer off the back, just so I can see a little bit of everything that's going on. So there is a nice capability of having that network integration, and all the companies are all doing it. They all have the same integration.
Joe?
Yeah?
Sorry to interrupt, but there was a gentleman in our store asking about that, and I don't know if he's here, but you can actually split a screen and run your back transducer and your front transducer off the bow mount on one screen, and it'll show the two.
And see the two different.
Is that guy here tonight? I don't think he is. Too bad, because he had that question the other day.
Garmin,
I said that Joe was the guy
Garmin
to
is
talk
going to be
to.
releasing some new software stuff for 2024. Depends on your unit. I'm hearing they're already at 6. I think this year they might get up to 8. 8 different screens you could share separately to split.